Starting with the Tier 4 dimensions, we have Rador. Rador is pretty interesting. As mentioned earlier, it's the only world that isn't first accessed via a realm stone, but via a structure in another world, instantly making it stand out before you even set foot in here. As for the dimension itself, it's quite blue. The wiki describes it as being filled with many strange beings and magical structures, though I think a simpler way to word it would be to say that it is fantasy-themed. For mobs, we have stuff like unicorns, fairies, and knights in shining armors, a couple abstract ones which are really fun. Speaking of blue, we have another dimension where most of its assets share a unifying color, and this one pulls it off extremely well. There's a lot of different shades of blue represented here, and everything has a unique silhouette from each other. It's a beautiful dimension, frankly. One criticism I do have with this dimension is, I find the terrain generation and structures boring. The generation is hilly, pretty identical to many other dimensions, and doesn't do a lot to make itself stand out. Aside from, I guess, maybe how low the clouds are, that's a bit interesting. Yeah, like, that down there is, like, where you start the dimension, like, that kind of Y level. It's it's kind of strange how low the clouds are here. I wonder if there's, like, a story reason for that. Okay, I guess we have clouds in our face now. Something about it feels a little too natural somehow, too. I can't help but feel that it might look cool with castle pieces or minor structures dotted everywhere, given that, you know, it is fantasy-themed in a way. The existing structures aren't anything you haven't seen before either. You got your typical Lotto Man structure and enemy spawner. This structure is literally just a platform. You walk up, grab the item in the center, and just leave. The item in question being the Rune Randomizer, which is actually a pretty fun item. So cool, in fact, that I kinda wish you could get it earlier. It probably would have led to me experimenting with weapons that use runes as ammunition more. There's this one other that I think is supposed to spawn underground, but I literally never found one. Oh, and speaking of the underground, mining for elecanium is excruciating. I really hated having to do that. There is one really unique boss spawner, however. It's a 2-story castle that I swear they intended for you to find a way to cheese the said boss using its geometry. It's actually kind of interesting. This boss almost felt like a puzzle because of this. Now, again, I'm not really a big fan of the bosses in this dimension, so when I do bring one up like this, it's typically a good thing, you know? It stands out. This is a neat dimension. I just wish it had something a little extra to make it really, like, stick out from a lot of other ones. You can do so much of a fantasy setting like this, and while I love what's here so far, it feels like it barely scratches the surface of what you can do with a concept like this. And with that palate cleanser out of the way, let's talk about my favorite dimension in the game. So, we're talking about a dimension that's mechanically interesting, visually stunning, a place I spent hours even when I was completely done with it, despite the fact that you can't breathe by default or even see. It's just that fun to explore. Welcome to Lutallus. This is a dimension based on outer space, essentially taking place in the void. But scattered all around you in every direction are these giant asteroids. They're numerous, and they're not just for show, as they'll frequently be dotted with ores, ice, netherrack, even little spawner rooms. They feel almost ripped out of the overworld, like bits of what we've seen and are familiar with rearranged and contorted into something quite strange. A rare type of asteroid are these ones with little ecosystems inside them that spawn monsters that are a reference to Commander Keen. It's not often you see direct references like that. It's kinda cool, actually. It's weirdly chill just to equip something like, say, the Gravitator and float around in space. There's something surprisingly surreal about it. It's a ton of fun, although all of this pales in comparison, though, to my single favorite structure in the entire mod, the Zal ship. This structure is simply magnificent. It's so large that I swear the wiki page for it alone is longer than it is for some entire dimensions. When I saw of these things creeping into my draw distance, I was both intimidated and excited. Walking up to the entrance and seeing a naturally spawning piston door was a pretty surreal first impression, too. And then, I wasn't expected to take me like an entire half hour to explore everything. The ship has it all. Every conceivable function a sci-fi crew would need has a place here. A control room, a sleeping quarters, a meeting room, storage, even tons of alien technology. The place is run by these guys, the Zals. They look almost robotic, though I like to believe they are biological, if only because you can also see children running around here. They're pretty friendly too. Many of them will even do trades with you, although they do incarcerate tons of prisoners and probably engage in slave labor, so they're not perfect. Weirdly, I like how you're not really able to interact with them that much. Most of them just give off a single one-liner that's more often than not are them being weirded out by you. It made me feel like the protag was just too nervous to say anything back or question what they are. Or maybe we've seen so much at this point that this doesn't even faze the protagonist. It really isn't often I think much about the player character's opinions in a game like this, so it was actually a very surreal experience. If I did have one criticism with this dimension, it's that yet again, it's another one that feels needlessly dark. I mean, space has light, right? I mean, heck, here's one right here. Like, look at this world thumbnail they use in the wiki. That's not a world thumbnail. That's a graphic I use when I need to censor something in a video. Oh, that's a penis. There's also this strange mechanic involving the boss. Most bosses you have to manually summon with like an item or something, but the boss of this world is only one in the game that can spawn randomly. I'm actually not against this. Also, let's put these back on. I'm actually not against this. It's unique in a fun way, but there's also some pretty annoying flaws with how it works. There's not really a rhyme or reason to how it spawns when it does, and given how open space is, it can sometimes be impossible to find. The boss music also kicks in every time it appears, and while it is a good theme, it doesn't really work as something you hear frequently as almost a random encounter theme. The first time I ever found a Zal ship, it spawned outside the structure, and I think it kept floating in and out of when it counts as, like, present, which had this theme starting and stopping constantly as I was just trying to explore this thing, and it was pretty immersion-breaking. Again, I kind of like the idea of a randomly spawning boss, but I do wish there were more stipulations to avoid awkward situations like this. Other than those two issues, though, absolute masterpiece of a world, easily my favorite part of the entire mod. The next dimension is the Grecon. Okay, I don't know why, but when I was playing around this part of the game, and even when I was writing this part of the script, I found myself constantly confusing stuff from this dimension with stuff from the Abyss. Has anyone else ever had that issue? My best guess to why is because they both have a vague horror theme to them. They also have very similar terrain generation, and are even both pretty darn dark normally. I will say, of the two, I think I do prefer the Grecon slightly more, though. For one, it's a little bit easier to traverse, mostly because, like, you know, the palette isn't as gratingly red, and the structures are a bit more unique. I like the structures just a little bit more. It also has my favorite designed enemy in the mod, the Grill Face. This monster also has a funny gimmick where it can jump scare you on hit. This place also has Bane, probably my favorite boss in the game. Like, I don't know, I just love the gimmick and chaos it can provide. It's just fun, which is definitely notable given my typical opinion on the bosses in this. You can also get the Ghoulish armor here, which is a set I use right up until the end of the game. Dare I say it's probably my favorite armor in the mod. It's an okay dimension. Honestly, though, it does feel difficult to place it any higher than the Something's Missing tier, however, only because it just feels like a cooler Abyss, and the Abyss I already had pretty mixed feelings on anyway. That and, like, this is probably the least amount I'm ever going to say about any dimension in this video. Like, I just really don't have much to say about the Grecon. I really wish it did more that was just unique to itself, whether that be a different terrain generation, more emphasis on its forest, more unique structures. I do enjoy what's here, though. I just wish there was something a bit more unique to it. My first exposure to the next dimension started in a pretty funny way. It's Laborian, a dimension based around aquatics, so like the ocean and ocean life. Now, you know how I sometimes mention how a few dimensions used to have radically different terrain generation? Well, this is another example of that. I never got this far on my original 2020 playthrough, but I remember from screenshots and videos I saw of it that it tended to be flat, bright, and colorful, and consisting of islands separated by oceans. Kinda cool, right? So with this in mind for this playthrough, I built my portal, I walked in, and I was confused when I immediately saw the oxygen meter. Did I spawn underwater? That would have been pretty appropriate, I guess, but maybe I should get to land. Gosh, this whole place seems kind of dark too, so I guess it's another dimension I'm wearing these for the whole time. As I swam around aimlessly though, even by some admittedly wild mobs, suddenly it hit me what was going on. This dimension was no longer a bunch of islands surrounded by oceans. This dimension was the ocean! The entire dimension is underwater now. I was like, oh god, I can't do anything here right now. And I exited the portal, to which I was almost so surprised when a bunch of stuff exploded behind me. Immediately, I think this is some kind of glitch. I don't know why, but leaving specifically Laborian in particular occasionally causes mobs to spawn and randomly explode. Anyway, I got actually prepared for this, then dived in, and it was a surreal experience. Although not particularly a fun one. I want to be real here, but I don't find swimming fun in Minecraft. Yes, even after the big water update that changed everything about how it worked. Trust me, it is a lot better than it used to be, but there's still so much I find cumbersome and frustrating about it. Constantly jolting up and down as you swap from walking in water mode to swim mode, how hard it can be to get your bearings when deep underwater, when it's super dark. It's something I wish the game as a whole just did a lot better. This is frustrating though. This is actually the last dimension in the bottom tier, by the way, but it sucks because it's not necessarily the mod's fault. This is a really creative, unique concept for a dimension, but it's just also a concept that's fighting an uphill battle by default. Let's talk about some positives, though. The mobs are really cool. A thing I love about deep sea aesthetic is how creepy and alien some of the creatures can look, and this world has some mobs that really lean into that terrifying uncertainty. There are also these merman guys that give me the feeling that this world is being lived in some kind of way. Breathing civilizations the same way, say, the Lalantians did. These small castle structures are super fun, too. I love some of the armor here too. The Hydroplate set gives you regen when you are touching water, which is not only great for this dimension obviously, but lets you do this trick where you can place a water bucket down and snipe enemies from the center just about anywhere you can place water. The Arculus helmet is great too. It provides its own oxygen, essentially making it a flat upgrade to the face mask. This dimension just has great loot overall. So, in conclusion, I don't hate this dimension, but it is going to be in the bottom tier, if only because I just don't really like water in Minecraft that much and swimming mechanics that much, but it is a very creative and interesting and, like, really well put together dimension regardless. Oh, it also has these things too. Yeah, that's an enemy. Ah! We're in the home stretch here. This is the second to last dimension of the game. Welcome to Dystopia. I love the name, it's a cool play on words on Dystopia. Now, I might sound like a broken record here when I say that my biggest issue with this dimension is how dark it is. Although, I feel like I'm more justified than ever here, as visibility in this dimension is so bad that it's mentioned several times on the wiki. Look at this image. Would you believe me if I told you that this is a screenshot where the player has night vision? Can you even see me here? Like, I'm over on this corner. You can't see anything here. Oh my god. When I put on the night vision goggles, it's still difficult to see. It's just the entire place is dark gray. For the record, if we're actually counting here, there are 9 dimensions where it's dark by default, to a point at which I feel inclined to always wear the night vision goggles. That's about half. Again, I don't have an issue with a dark dimension inherently. Deeplands is pretty dark, and it makes sense as it adds the small meta where you place down torches to reveal the cave and a fog of war effect. Vox Ponds is designed to look desecrated and apocalyptic. Turning on night vision for the first time gives you this chill as you realize just how desolate it is, and genuinely that's a powerful moment of the mod. But for every dimension where the darkness adds something artistic, there's like 2 or 3 where it feels completely unnecessary and actively takes away from the experience to me, as I either need to focus all my efforts on lighting or wear these immersion-breaking goggles with this ugly green vignette. I'm not even joking when I say by endgame, whenever I made armor in this mod, I genuinely contemplated not even making helmets anymore, because what's the point? For half of my playthrough, I am wearing these goggles. Like, seriously. Playing half the game with a distracting filter if you're going for completion? What is this, Crash Bandicoot 4? Like, I don't know, am I just missing something here? Anyway, as for unique stuff to Dystopia, we have some pretty wild mobs. Most of them are melee units, but they're all these abstract and creepy shapes. There's some good color design here too, whereas most of the world is grayscale, most enemies have some bits of red on them or white on them to make them easily spot and fight at a distance, given you have night vision. The Crucifix probably have my favorite design in all of the mobs here. There's also these primordial villages. I've talked a couple times about NPCs, but these ones are especially notable to me because they're where you can obtain the energistic equipment. They have this cool gimmick where you can charge them to make them mine more efficiently. I'm not really a fan of how most of the structures are just boxes with mobs inside of them, though there's kind of a lore reason, interestingly enough. They're locked up, according to the Primordial Guide. Always love little lore bits like this. But yeah, there are certainly elements to this dimension I enjoy, but the visibility issue is so prevalent. I do care to go back, it's certainly not in that tier, but I guess missing something is an appropriate place for it. It's missing something, alright, and if you can't see what it's missing... I was gonna end this one with a joke, but I don't know, like, you just can't see, okay? And then I have to use him to jump on, and then who's this? Oh, what? Is this safe for work? And now we're finally here, the last dimension of the mod. Welcome to the Shel Lands. It's the last top-tier dimension. Yeah, we're starting with the tearing at the start of the section again this time. They went all out with this final world. It looks cool, it's fun to explore, the enemies are interesting and creative, the loot is sublime, even the boss isn't that bad. I describe it as a dimension based around holiness and light, some kind of sparse forest within a heaven analog. It's kind of beautiful, honestly. Yellow and turquoise make for a gorgeous color scheme. The enemies and structures follow this color scheme as well, and they're also great in general. The monsters take a large variety of shapes and strategies. They got the worms that disguise themselves as flowers, the biblically accurate angels, those guys who weaken you if you're in their vicinity. I love how different they can be too. It leaves you prioritizing different monsters depending on the situation for some truly dynamic combat. That's something I've kind of been wanting the whole game, basically. The structures are big and bold. There's tons of them, and even the ones that are more or less just decorations stand out and are fun to explore. Hi, I'm way up here now. One particular structure I find very interesting are the Shire Pillars. Okay, so a lore thing with this dimension is that it's actually held up by these giant pillars. That's why the Y value for the basic ground level is so high up. I personally got pretty invested in these pillars as, when I traveled to this dimension, my spawn just happened to be one, to be on top of one. So I spawned basically underground. This was just goofy and completely unintended, although it did make me probably the first person to ever make a bubble elevator in the Shel Lands. Bye! My one issue with this place is I hate mining for Shire Stone and Shire Gem ores. There's basically no underground to this dimension, as due to how high up it is and how much below of it is air, the crust is pretty thin. You think that would make it easy to mine for these resources, but I find they're so rare that you're just mining in a straight line for on and on. Like, all of this is man-made, and I swear, like, not much was found in here. Inevitably being the final world, the loot here is amazing. Lots of bows, guns, the biggest sword you have ever seen in your life. The Pickaxe is actually overpowered. It mines in like a 3x3 radius, which might not sound that crazy, but like it is absolutely ludicrous how much ground you can cover with this pickaxe. Also, is it just me, or does the knight armor look exactly like Tim's armor from Minecraft Story Mode? I kind of wonder if that was intentional, or if that was like another reference, you know? The last thing I'd like to talk about is that this is another dimension that used to have a very different world generation. And this one is kind of wild. Basically, the world consisted of a bunch of rooms. Like a bunch of square rooms. This was entirely scrapped. I think the reason being because it conflicted with structure generation too much. It's a very valid reason, though I kind of miss it in a way. It's so unique and unlike anything I've ever seen in this mod, or even from Minecraft in general. I wish the style of building could have been preserved in some kind of way, like maybe some kind of enormous labyrinth structure consisting of it. I don't know, it's a thought. But overall, though, this was an amazingly designed final world. It's pretty straightforward, all things considered, but still manages to contain tons of nuance and creative decisions. Easy top tier here. And that's all of them. God, I love this mod. Hi! Hey, buddy! What? Bye! Don't go to Laboreal, please. Advent of Ascension is an incredible time. It's an absolute blast of a mod to play. It's a mod with so much love and care put into it, and everything from its scope to its history, it really shows, you know? Like, this is something with a lot of dedication behind it. The devs are still working on it actively, though, to a point in which, by the time this video goes up, some of the stuff I talk about might be very well outdated. I still hope you enjoyed the video, though. Definitely give it a like or a comment if you did, or a share, because that sort of thing really does help engagement with these big videos that take me forever to make. And I'll leave a link to the wiki for this mod as well in the description below, if you're kind of curious about yourself and would like to learn more, whether it be a download yourself or even to join the community of the game to keep up with updates for it. But yeah, I think that is it for this video. God, as per usual with my essays, this took a little longer than expected, but I am so happy to finally be done with it. I would like to give a special thanks to my Patreon supporters, Royalbot Sean and Great Wolf and Firestriker. Thank you all for your support as well, and I will see you folks later. Thanks for watching.